I think I'll follow up a little bit on the point that Colin made, and I'll try to give a little bit of a overview of where we stand in terms of the great expectations from the Recovery and the Resilience Facility. Of course, I think the mandate when it was launched as a post-recovery instrument with a huge amount of 650 billion euros, is it actually delivering, and what is the status on the ground so far? So I think if you've, and I think many people here in the room are in Croatia, and I think if you follow the news, of course, the key question is always that we hear is the absorption. How much money of the 10 billion euros has Croatia absorbed? Yes, I have to say the implementation is going well. In Croatia, only two days ago, actually, the Commission gave a positive preliminary assessment for the 7th payment request, so like a 7th tranche of the facility out of the 10 that is being planned. So the implementation is going well. It has also picked up the implementation in all the other member states as well. So I would say it's on track. It needs to accelerate, but why is it important? It's important to say, okay, yes, the money is flowing, the money is reaching the economy, and unlike in cases of some of the previous crises, the public investment has been maintained. In Europe, this is also something that was one of the engines of the growth. But when we speak about the RRF, I think we also have to keep in mind that the RRF, as it was envisaged, is much more than just a budgetary injection. It's not only injection of money in the state budgets and you spend, and this would be the only way basically to contribute to growth. There's two important things that I would like to say. First one is it's not only at the country level about the direct effect. So for example, for Croatia, yes, Croatia will benefit from 10 billion euros. If we look at the whole of the European Union, these type of national allocations for the budget are so-called direct effects, but there's also a lot of indirect effects or the spillover effects for the overall economy in which we look at, and it's actually really good outcome so far, how much the RRF has contributed in terms of the cross-border, let's say, cooperation, or actually boosting the investments, the equipment, which is being delivered from one country to another. We've done a very detailed analysis of that on a number of countries, including Germany, including Austria, including Slovenia, quite a few. Unfortunately, not for Croatia yet. But what we see is actually that out of overall RRF impacts in the EU, 40% is actually these indirect spillover effects from imported goods and services from other countries. And I think it's important to underline, I think it's not as tangible as we see the money flowing in the budget, but I think this is actually one of the value added of this type of an instrument that is EU-wide with a very specific mandate. And I think also shows the contribution of the single market, even though, of course, there's room for improvement on that. The second point that I also want to underline, again, it's not only about the money. One of the key elements of the RRF was this package of reforms and investment that had to go hand in hand, and this is also how all of the recovery plans were designed. A quarter of all of these investments was actually, what we look at the plans, is went for the quality of the institutions, so reforms of the public administration, judiciary, anti-corruption, so these are all of the elements that we need as a base in terms of growth and innovation and everything else that goes in that. Around 17% of these reforms are for business environments, so simplification, cutting red tape, digitalization. Of course, there were a number of reforms in terms of the labor market, the skills. So yes, these were in plans, but I think what I really want to underline here is one, they've already taken place. They were front-loaded. So many of these reforms actually took place at the very beginning of the implementation of the facility, which means that they create good conditions for implementation of the investments, not only from the RRF, but also cohesion funding and the national funds as well. And the second one is that we see, in terms of the priority investments, you will know in terms of the European semester that we issue with the Council country-specific recommendations. And with the RRF, only in the last few years, we see that the reforms of these country-specific recommendations have increased by 17 percentage points. So this is only in a matter of a few years to show and to account for the positive, to ensure that actually the reforms which are tough, I think we shouldn't also forget that. Reforms are difficult, they required a lot of time, they require a lot of political capital, and this is why I think also the RRF gives a contribution to do some of these difficult decisions and to ensure that there's a good environment and the framework to implement the investments as well. I'll just say, and maybe a quick comment to the point of the concern whether there will be growth when the money is spent. And in terms of, yeah, maybe how should I say this? There will be, okay. What we calculate right now, it's very difficult to account both for investments and the reforms. Investments are very tangible. So for example, the next year, we see that the European GDP might increase up until 1.4, maybe percentage points with the RF than it would have been in the no-case scenario. This is, of course, assuming full implementation. But also some of the analysis, including by the ECB, well, basically, these 1.4 it's only investments. So it's actually an underestimation of all of the reforms that will take place. And the impact of these reforms will actually be more in the medium and the longer term. So what we see is that even when the RF is done next year, up until 2032, 2033, an additional 1 point of the GDP will be a result of the reforms which are taking place now. So it's very difficult to quantify, but these are the projections, some of the Commission, some of the ECB. And I have to again say, provided that the recovery plans as they stand right now are implemented in full. And the deadlines are very tight, end of August next year. So we'll see.